Alright, so we're starting to put the frame together, and I got this far. This is the base of the frame here. So on the bottom, we have the X-shaped plate, and that'll be the bottom of the sandwich plate. And the biggest plate will be the top of the sandwich plate. And you got the arms sandwiched in between via a couple of screws here and a couple of different size nuts. It doesn't really matter which way you put the arms. There's this little notch for the third screw for the motors. It really doesn't matter if it's facing this way or facing the opposite way. So I got all of mine's facing forward. This is the front of the quadcopter. This is the back of the quadcopter. So all of them is facing forward. So just make sure you just do it uniformly so it balances out. Now there's 4 screws for the standoffs and 4 screws to hold the arm down. So you got a dedicated screw and nut to hold the arm down, and you got a sharing screw and nut for the stack as well. So the screw that you want to use for this one right here to screw onto the stack is slightly longer. Let's see which one is longer. It's slightly longer. This one is the longer one. So it is slightly longer than the other one. You got a set of 2 different kind of screws, and these are 2 extra screws that I noticed that we have. So they give you 5 of these screws each. So the slightly longer one is the one you want to put right here, so it sticks out a little bit, and the slightly shorter one you're going to use for the dedicated arm screw. And the dedicated arm screw, you're going to use the nut, like this nut here, and the other one is a rounded nut that fits into that little round groove on the top of the sandwich plate with the little ridges on the bottom, so it grabs onto the plate and you screw it on, and there's going to be a slight bit sticking out, and that's where you're going to place the nylon standoffs, so you can start stacking your ESCs and you can start stacking up your, so there you go, it's kind of like that, stacking up your flight controller and all that. All right, so let's get started putting the quadcopter together. All right, so I've dumped all of the contents of the bag that contains all of the screws, nuts, the standoffs, and all of the nylon standoffs into this magnetic dish here. So we got the long standoffs as well as all of the necessary nylon standoffs that you need. Also inside the bag was this VTX mount, a 3D printed VTX antenna mount. Also has the little mounting for the antenna sleeves, and also this is the carbon fiber frame kit, and we've already kind of put it together. So all I have left are the side plates to mount the camera, and they'll go right in the front here. And then once everything is built out, we're going to go ahead and put the top plate right on top. All right, so let's take a look at what else we get in the kit. All right, so everything came inside of this box here. Nice box, and all of the components comes inside of this bubble wrap and inside of the static free bag as well. So there's the GPS module, and looks like this is the flight controller. We got the FPV camera. Looks like the VTX. Yep, that is the VTX. And we got the ESCs here, and we got a capacitor already soldered onto the ESCs, looks like. And we got the props that go with it. It's the Dell Props 6045s. And we got one motor here. We got another motor. That one had something else in there, I think. Okay, one more motor and the final motor. That was for the motor. We got the VTX antenna. And we got the connector, the MMCX connector. And we got a little carbon fiber wrench, some zip ties, and all of the wiring harness as well as the XT60 connector. And that is everything that came in the box. All right, so I got the initial nylon standoffs already screwed in now to accept the ESC. So here's a closer look at the ESCs here, 4-in-1. And we got a 470 microfarad 25 volt capacitor already soldered on there. And there's the negative pad and there's the positive pad. So if you flip it over, that's the positive pad marked by BAT, and there's the negative pad marked by ground. And if you look real close, right on this corner where I'm pointing at with the tweezer, you'll see a number 1. And right up here, you'll see a number 2. Right here, you'll see a number 3, and you'll see a number 4 there. So that is the motor sequence. So we're gonna have to place the ESCs, not like this way, but this way here. So go ahead and slide the ESCs right on top. So what we are going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and solder on the XT60 connector, just like this. Red to the BAT and black to the ground. Okay, so just got done soldering on the XT60 power cable to the ESCs, and while I was there at the same time, I soldered on all of the motor wires to the ESC as well. Now, I made a mistake when I was building the Tyro119. I bolted down the motors first prior to soldering on the motor wires to the ESC. And because these motor wires are the old school kind, it's not the one that has a silicone coating. So it is very hard to bend. So do yourself a favor, solder on the motor wires to the ESC first, and then go ahead and bolt down the motors onto the frame. So what I'm going to do now is just go ahead and bolt the motors down to the arms and move on to the next step. All right, so here you go. I got the motors screwed on to the arms, just 3 screws per motor. And now I was able to straighten out the motor wires to where I wanted it to go on the arm. So all I got to do is just electric tape it down. And in anticipation for the flight controller, I've already secured down the ESCs with these nylon standoffs. So next step, the flight controller. Okay, so the flight controller is now on. All I did was just place it right on there and put some nylon standoffs to screw it down. Now on the flight controller, there's this little arrow. So you want to make sure you put that arrow facing forward of the quadcopter. And one thing I didn't mention earlier is the placement of the motors. Now these two have the black nuts and these two have the silver nuts. So you want to place the silver nut ones on the right front and on the bottom left, and the black nut motors on the top left and on the bottom right, because these will be counteracting the rotation of the prop. So it'll be self-tightening instead of self-loosening when you hit a branch or anything like that. Okay, so next is the wiring harnesses. All right, so I got all of the wiring harnesses connected here, and there's one more you kind of can't see. They're in the front. There's the wiring harness connecting the flight controller to the ESC. This one is all black wires, and I got it kind of tucked in between the 2 boards. So that'll be the front of the quadcopter. So right next to it on the right, here's the wiring harness for the FPV camera. So you just plug it in and play. Very simple, no soldering required. And on the right, on the top, this will be for the VTX, and here's the VTX. All you got to do is connect it and you are good to go there as well. One right next to it is for the GPS module, and that one I got it kind of coming out and getting tucked in between the 2 boards, coming out the rear. And here's the GPS module. I'm probably going to stick it right on top of the rear arm there. And there's one more coming out the back. This one has a 3-pin servo connector on it, and this will be the receiver. This is probably the only one that you're going to have to solder on, because whichever receiver you use, I don't know if they're going to come with a 3-pin servo connector. If it does, then it's just a plug and play. But I'm probably going to use an XM Plus, so I'm going to have to cut it and solder on my receiver. So that is the only other area that you're going to have to solder on. Everything else here is just connect and you are good to go. And also right next to the wiring harness for the receiver in the rear portion of the flight controller, there's going to be 3 tiny little pads. You will need to bridge the left 2 pads for SBUS receivers and the right 2 pads to use PPM, DSMX, and IBUS receivers. All right, so now I have the VTX mounted on the stack, and I've also added a signal wire from the TX3 on the flight controller to the data pin on the VTX. This VTX is supposed to have smart audio, so I want to find out if it really actually does. And also on the 3D printed VTX antenna mount, I had to slice off a little piece right on the back here, so to make that area a little thinner, so when I screw on the VTX antenna, it will sit there correctly. So now what we have left is the receiver and the FPV camera. All right, guys, so here it is, almost done. So the camera is mounted already, and we got the side plates mounted, and there's a couple of screws holding the camera on each side. One of them is in the middle hole and one of them is on the slider. So the top plate is also mounted on there, so it is just about a finished product. So the receiver, I've got it placed right underneath here, underneath of the ESC, on top of the sandwich plate, and I'm using an XM Plus, so you can kind of see the double-sided sticky tape right here. It's just halfway in and halfway out. There's a lot of space underneath of the camera, so I thought that was a good spot to put it. That's where I put my receiver on the Tyro119 build. And here's the receiver antenna coming off and getting taped onto the zip tie on the front arms. So basically now all I have to do is go into Betaflight and configure everything. All right, so here we are in Betaflight. We go ahead and connect the quadcopter. Okay, we are connected, and here in the setups page, what you want to do first is calibrate the accelerometer. I've already done so, so my quadcopter is nice and flat. So place your quadcopter on a nice flat level surface and hit that calibrate accelerometer. Let me go ahead and show log as well. Okay, so the board is Maytech F405 and Tyro119. Okay, let's see what version of Betaflight. We got version 4.0.5. Alright, so let's go into the ports tab. Okay, so here the serial RX is on UART2 and GPS for sensor input is selected to UART1. I'm just going to leave it. I'm not going to be using GPS because I have the XM Plus receiver. So on UART3, however, I did turn on TBS Smart Audio because we got a wire hooked up to the TX3 pin on the flight controller and on the VTX, the data pin. So hopefully Smart Audio is working. So save and reboot on that. And in the configuration, DShot 600, 1.5 on the motor idle. That's how my Tyro129 is set up, and it is flying fine. So yeah, usually it's about 5 or 6, but 1.5 is doing just fine. 8 kilohertz, 8 kilohertz, accelerometer turned on. Barometer, I don't need it to be turned on. I'll just leave it on. Magnetometer as well, since I'm not using GPS. Arming 180 degrees. I typed in Tyro119 on the craft name. Serial based receiver and SBUS is selected. And here, if you're going to be using GPS with a telemetry receiver, you want to turn this on. But I'm not going to be using GPS, so I'm just going to turn it off. Soft serial was already selected. Telemetry was already selected. As well as air mode was already selected. I turned it off. OSD already selected, anti-gravity dynamic filter was already selected, and everything else was already selected. So save and reboot. Okay, so power and battery. I put the minimum cell voltage to 3.1, warning cell voltage to 3.1 as well, and saved it. And in the fail-safe tab, here I put the throttle on hold. And if you were going to be using GPS and you want to use GPS rescue, here you will turn that on and then put in the parameters of the angle, initial altitude, descent distance, and all that. It is really nice now that you can do this in the fail-safe tab instead of the CLI. So I'm not going to be using GPS rescue, so I'm just going to select drop. And PID tuning, we're just going to be using the Betaflight default PIDs for now to see how it behaves, and then we'll make some changes after that. So in the receivers tab here, let me go ahead and turn on my transmitter.
Welcome to OpenTN.
Okay, we should be getting connected here anytime soon. Hello, there we go. All right, so you can see that auxiliary 12 is the RSSI channel. So RSSI channel selected to auxiliary 12. I'm using FR Sky transmitter, so TAER 1234. And let's see here, throttle, yaw, make sure all of these are working fine. Roll, pitch, arming, mode, and buzzer. All right, so everything is working fine. Go ahead and save it. And here in the modes tab, I've selected auxiliary 1 to arm at the top of the switch. In auxiliary 2, bottom of the switch, I have angle mode. And auxiliary 3 at the top of the switch, I have the beeper. And auxiliary 2 at the top of the switch, I got air mode selected here, and that is just about it. And in the OSD, I got all of my usual OSD stuff turned on, RSSI, main battery voltage, so on and so forth. But if you were going to be using a telemetry receiver and you want telemetry data showing up here, you can do the GPS speed, GPS satellites, altitude, longitude, latitude, and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to be using GPS, so this is my basic setup here. And that is just about it that I do in Betaflight. So let's see if we have OSD on our FPV goggles or monitor, and also to see whether or not we have smart audio. One more thing in the setups page in Betaflight, you want to grab your quadcopter and you want to pitch forward and pitch up and roll to the left and roll to the right, yaw to the left, yaw to the right, and make sure that the diagram is doing exactly how you are rotating the quadcopter. Alright, so here we are in the FPV goggles view with the camera lens cover on. So we do have OSD. So let's go into the OSD menu and into the features, smart audio, and we are set to F2 5760 25 milliwatts. Let's go down and change the power up to 200, set it and confirm. All right, so we are still F2 5760, but we got 200 milliwatts set. Let's change the channel to channel 1 and set it, confirm it, and there you go. We are out of frequency. So my goggles are set to Fat Shark 2 and my Quadcopter VTX is set to Fat Shark 1. Let me go ahead and search on my goggles. And there you go. We are back online. So it is working just fine. So let me go ahead and take off the lens cover and do that one more time. So channel set to Fat Shark channel 2. And let's go ahead and set it and confirm. And there we go. We are out of frequency or channel. Let me go ahead and search on my goggles. And there we go. We are in Fat Shark channel 2. So the VTX's smart audio is working on this quadcopter. Okay, so next let's check the motor direction. And do this in Betaflight Motors tab, but this way is easy as well. A piece of paper, and let's see here, arming. Okay, so spinning the correct way, and yep, spinning correct way as well. Yep, spinning the correct way. So far, so good. There we go, spinning the correct way as well. All right, so all 4 motors are spinning the correct way. Now, when I soldered on the motor wires onto the ESC, I did it in sequence. So the top wire is this one here, the middle wire is on the middle, and the lower wire is on the 3rd pad. So all of them is in sequence, exactly like how the motor wires are running into the ESC. So if you do it that way, all of the motors are going to be spinning the correct way, and you don't have to do anything to change motor direction. Right, so just got done placing a foam pad, just hot glued it on the bottom of the quadcopter. This kit does not come with a anti-slip battery pad, but it does come with a battery strap. So I'm going to put this on as well as the props, and let's see if the quadcopter hovers. All right, here we go with the hover test of the Eachine Tyro119 arming. Okay, give it a little throttle. Yep, looks good. Oh yeah, feels good too. All right, let me flick it over to acro and do a little hover test in acro. Oh yeah, feels really nice in acro as well. Default PIDs. All right, I think that'll conclude our hover test and this video as well of the Eachine Tyro119 build and hover test. I'm going to do a little performance test on our next video with a 4S, 5S, and a 6S. I got a 4S battery on here for the hover test. So that is just about it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you again next time.